Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. So I just got another thing for you to think about today. Throughout our evolution as a human species, we've become more and more domesticated. And with that domestication, we've moved inside more and more. And what I mean by that is literally we've moved inside. There was a time when there was no such thing as inside. In fact, there was a time when inside, the closest thing that resembled it would be being inside the fur that used to grow on us. But now we don't have that fur, of course, because we replaced that fur with shelters. And our shelters throughout human history have become more and more and more elaborate. And this has made obsolete all of those attributes and capabilities which would have allowed us to survive outside. Now, when I talk about after the collapse and grid down is a very outside thing, because you can only stay inside so long. If you have to go out and hunt for food, if you have to go out and scavenge for food, you can only stay inside in the sweltering heat for so long without air conditioning. Inside depends on the grid. A classic example of this is these high-rise apartment buildings and projects. It doesn't get any more inside than a lot of these condominiums and apartments and such, because there is no yard. You'll notice that throughout the course of history, we used to be very free range. The range of every human being was very great. So, we went through the nomadic phase, and then even in the earlier pastoral and horticultural phases, we still had these very large swaths of land that we needed to manage and be stewards of in order to get sustenance for ourselves. But as all those responsibilities have been offloaded to the grid and big agriculture, our homes then have shrunk and shrunk and shrunk, and progressively it's gotten to the point where new builds nowadays, the amount of yard space you get, you can pretty much reach over and high-five your neighbor in most cases. And I'm not just talking about apartments and condos. Obviously that's been that way for a while, but I'm talking about the new housing builds, the new condominiums. They're all house and no yard. The future is all house and no yard. It's all inside and no outside. Now, whether this is by design or whether it's just the natural progression of our domestication as human beings isn't very clear, because I think it's a little bit of both. You think about it, how do you rob somebody from their ability to basically take care of themselves and fend for themselves? Well, you basically strip from them the only means of sustaining themselves and not having to rely on this massive system, which is not foolproof, which could collapse at any moment if some big catastrophe hit. You completely deprive them of what they need in order to thrive in that respect. That's how you control people. And you control people really with the food. Another part of it is, of course, that people don't want to be burdened with the task of yard work. So it's much easier to just, pave everything with cement, go to work, watch TV, eat the crap that they're feeding you, and just kind of zone out and forget about nature. And the closest thing that we have to nature are these man-made parks which try to simulate it, which usually end up just being these semi-toxic vistas, which you can't really use them for much. It's like these man-made lakes that they build in these suburban areas. You don't want to swim in them because they're full of junk. They really end up being stagnant, mosquito-infested sloughs that try to satiate whatever remains of people's desire to be close to nature that hasn't been totally destroyed by the system in which we live. And this is why people are doing the off-grid thing and the homesteading thing, because there's a part of us that recognizes that. Myself, I'm in the mortgage trap with a lot of other people. Millions of other people, millions of us are in the mortgage trap. But at least I have a yard. At least I have a respectable sized lot by today's standards anyways, that I can do something with. Because most of these new housing builds nowadays have absolutely no green space whatsoever, and the amount of green space that they give you is absolutely pathetic. A few years ago, we were looking at houses, and we decided to check out these duplexes because they just had immense amounts of square footage, but there was absolutely no yard. And the real estate agent, I don't know if she was out to lunch or something, but we're looking at maybe a 10-foot by 8-foot yard. She's talking like, oh, you can have the shed over here and the garden over here. And I'm thinking to myself, like, what the hell are you talking? What kind of garden are we going to grow? Like 2 or 3 tomato plants? You know? So it's sad to see that we're getting very, very soft as a society. And the more inside we go, the softer we get. Naturally, you have to get softer and softer. We have it so good these days. I mean, the kids nowadays have it so good. Like the technology and the food. You know, you go to Costco and it's just bursting at the seams with this fresh produce and these pre-made cuisines, and everything that your heart might desire is available to you at a very reasonably low cost. But it comes with a cost. It comes with the cost of being incredibly soft. Everything is inside, even the gym. Even myself, who's an avid gym goer, don't think that the thought doesn't occur to me almost every time I walk through those doors that, man, I am a total hamster in a hamster wheel when I'm in here. I get that. I do it because I want to stay fit. I know what it really is. It's a way that we can control our primitive aggressions. And I think that, like I say, whether it's by design, I'm not sure. But these gyms nowadays too, even though they're for the purpose of trying to manage that testosterone so it doesn't, actually try to work together and challenge the powers that be at some point. We want to manage it in those gyms and allow it to express itself in these ways which are very easily to control. But even the gyms nowadays, like all of the machines do half the work for people. And that's why I stick to free weights, by the way. If you haven't seen my Mad Max workout video yet, go and check that out. You'll see that I do try to keep it real when it comes to lifting weights. But I'm telling you, everything about the grid is inside. And now, by some standards, you might say that, well, the only way we can evolve our minds is if we're inside. And I'm talking about innovating the finer types of technology, like the interstellar warp drive and all the rest. You can't make that if you're rummaging through the jungle trying to find calories. You just can't. So you need to be inside for that. So where are we going as a species then? Are we going fully inside? Is it going to get to a point where the outside is so toxic, like it almost is now, that we're going to have to remain in some kind of closed system? These are the things I think about anyways, guys. I want to know what you think about it, because, if you think about how docile we've become, imagine 1,000 years from now, if we make it, how docile we would be then, in terms of our physical stature, in terms of our ability to naturally and physically be resilient to what nature can throw at us. So it's always been my thesis that the more technologically advanced we become, the more devastating the collapse would be, because we would be more domesticated. Like if the collapse happened 100 years from now, it'd be far worse than if it happened today, because at least right now we're perhaps less domesticated than we will be in 100 years, when for all we know this whole frickin' planet is going to be paved in asphalt and there's going to be no nature left. That's a possibility. There may come a time when to go outside would be the death of us, and you're going to have to wear some suit to go outside because it's just going to be too toxic. Everything is going to be too toxic because of our environmental mismanagement. I'm not talking about global warming. I'm talking about the fact that we're turning the earth into a damn dumpster, and that every single stone on this planet has been turned over to make room for us. And if you don't believe me, go on Google Earth and just zoom in on any part of the earth, with the exception of some places in South America and in Africa where it's still underdeveloped. Anywhere in North America, every single inch of this continent has been converted by man and has been manipulated by man. If you go to India on Google Earth, it's just astounding how every single blade of grass. Have you ever seen the movie No Blade of Grass? Go see that movie, a good movie. But every single stone has been turned over. Every ounce of topsoil that could be put to use is being used. Almost all the arable land is being used. Almost all the freshwater sources are tapped. Right now we are on the brink, and if we don't figure out how to live inside indefinitely in this environment before the crap really hits the fan, then we're going to be in a lot of trouble, because the future is inside. The future is not outside. Preppers, survivalists, bushcrafters, we all are trying desperately to prepare ourselves for the outside. However, there is that bunker prepper, which appears to want to take the inside with them. And so maybe that's part of the distinction between survivalist and prepper, is that the prepper is trying to, like myself, is trying to maintain some kind of semblance of the world which may pass away. This world. We're trying to keep a bit of this world, keep as much of this world as possible, whereas the off-grid or homesteader, survivalist, bushcrafter, they're trying to escape that. They are trying to prepare themselves for the outside world that could come, but at the expense, of course, of reaping all the benefits of what it means to be an insider. Insiders versus outsiders. Hey, I'm kind of liking this distinction. So preppers and survivalists, or at least mostly survivalists and homesteaders and off-grid types, are outsiders. Really, truly outside of society, like Patti Smith would say. And the rest of the people are insiders, in the sense that you can reap the benefits of what's on the inside, but if the crap hits the fan and you get put outside, you might not survive. If, on the other hand, you're a person who thrives outside, but you don't reap all the benefits of what's going on here inside, and nothing happens, you may run the risk of having deprived yourself of all the potential and all of the amenities of modern civilization that have passed you by. That said, I do think collapse, both ecological, economical, is inevitable at some point. What shape that's going to take is unknown. What are your guys' thoughts on domestication and urbanization and how they relate to survival and prepping? Let me know in the comment section. Thanks for watching Canadian Prepper Out.